Hi, everyone. Barry McGuire here. I want to say it's live at 5 on Thursday, but it isn't. It's Monday. It's the main event. It's the main event. Last week we did a bit on foreclosure. Neil had a very interesting story to tell us about going through the foreclosure process. That provoked a lot of questions. We were a bit too jargon-ridden in that. In the last time we met up and talked about foreclosure. So today we're going to talk foreclosure basics. Foreclosure basics. What is a foreclosure? How does it work? How do we, as creative real estate investors, use foreclosure properties or understand foreclosure properties to perhaps participate and buy a foreclosure, or maybe fend off a foreclosure, or help somebody kind of exit or get out or avoid a foreclosure. So today's going to be all about foreclosure basics, and we'll do our best to not use too many $5 words. And if we do, you can slap our hands by putting up your hand and saying, what did you mean by? And then tell us what word we've casually thrown around without explaining what the word is. So yeah, all about foreclosures today. So I'm going to be joined today by Neil Taniguchi, who was kind enough to help out last week and tell us about his experience in actually going to court himself and working with a potential deal that looks like might be one where Neil buys a property by way of AFS after he helps the owner get out of foreclosure. So that was kind of the setup last week. So Neil is going to be the practical guy, the creative investor who actually has to write offers, to work with foreclosure lawyers, to analyze deals. Wayne Hillier is going to be the question guy. Wayne's going to be poking holes and asking questions because, as you all know, Wayne is a good questioner. He's good. He'd be a prosecutor. Huh? If he was a lawyer, he'd be a crown prosecutor, and he'd be skewering us with pointed questions, getting right to the heart of the matter. I'm going to be the moderator, legal kind of guy, and we're going to keep it all moving along. So let's bring in Wayne and Neil, and we're going to get going.
I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
You telling me, sir? Business honorable court.
All $5 word charges go to the lawyer, by the way.
Hey, come on.
And it's funny, like growing up as a kid, I always wanted to be a lawyer. And then I realized how much school was involved. So I just decided that real estate seemed a lot easier.
And you're right. You're right, for sure.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's get going. So it's going to be all about foreclosures tonight. We're going to have to finish on time tonight because we've got another session starting right at 6 o'clock. So just so everybody knows, that's the kind of timing we're going to work to. So foreclosure is the process, or the name around a process that a lender uses when someone who has borrowed money is not paying. So that is sort of kind of the blanket overall description of what a lender does when somebody isn't paying. So if I've got a mortgage to TD Bank and I'm not paying, sooner or later they're going to start this thing called the foreclosure process. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that part of it first, just some background for people before we get into some of the practicalities. What do we do as creative investors, what do we do with foreclosures? Mm-hmm. So let's start with that. So if you've lent money and you've taken a mortgage and somebody doesn't pay, you may be in the foreclosure process. And we usually talk about it in terms of banks, but anybody who has lent money can actually start the foreclosure process if they're not being paid. Right. Most of what we see is really with banks and big lenders. So if let's use Wayne as our example, we're going to turn him from the crown prosecutor into the indigent homeowner who can't pay his bills and is being foreclosed upon.
That's a big word, Barry.
Indigent. Oh no, I just
Big word.
oh, indigent. The guy who has no money. $5. Someone with no money. Someone poor. An indigent person. All right. So once a borrower misses a payment, I mean, the classic thing is for the lender to probably even let that go for 1 month. But if it goes into the next month, for sure, they're going to be on the phone to the borrower saying, "Hi, it's the bank. We noticed you didn't make last month's payment or this month's payment, and we just want to know what's going on." And the borrower says whatever they say, but if the truth and the real answer is that the borrower doesn't make the next payment, then they might get another phone call, or they might get a letter from the lender, right from the lender, not from the lawyers yet, saying this is a formal letter. We're advising you that your loan is in arrears, and sometimes they'll say, call us to talk about this some more, or we want you to pay it up by. Sometimes they start out with a harsher letter giving you firm notice that this is what you owe, and if you don't pay and bring it current by, and they give a date, then we'll have to take stronger action. There might be another letter in that chain. It's escalating letters. It's escalating levels of concern by the lender, escalating levels of what will happen if the borrower doesn't pay everything up. And if that doesn't get results for the lender, there's only so far they're going to go. A couple of phone calls, a couple of letters, 3 to 4 to 5 months in arrears. The next thing is the lender will send it to their collections department. Mm-hmm. And the collections people might take a run at collecting themselves. Sometimes the collections people are the ones that make the calls and send the letters. But once it's gone past a certain stage with the lender, 3, 4, 5 months, then it's going to go to the lawyers. It's going to go to foreclosure. So in this case, the lender will get hold of their lawyer and say, that darn Wayne isn't paying his mortgage. And so over to you guys. And the lender will package up all of the paperwork, the loan, the correspondence, all the financial records, an up-to-date summary of what the borrower owes, and then say, okay, ball in your court, you collect. At that point, the lender sends a letter. The lender's lawyer, right. The lender's lawyer now sends a letter, and it's a demand letter. It's officially called a demand letter, and they call it a demand letter because it says, we hereby demand that you pay this up. Sometimes this scares the borrower, and Wayne might phone up his lender, who he talked to before, and say, I know I'm in trouble and this and that. And almost always the lender will go, sorry, Wayne, it's gone to the lawyers. It's gone to foreclosure. You have to talk to them. Mm-hmm. So it's a little tough for the borrower to clear it all up. Now, if Wayne said, I've got a bank draft for every penny I owe you, and I can bring it down to a branch right now, they might say, okay. Or they might say, yeah, well, there's a big lawyer bill attached to this, Wayne. You don't know what that is, so your bank draft isn't the right number.
Right.
So we're at the stage where the lender sends the demand letter. And different lenders handle it different. This is a policy thing. It's how a particular law firm handles their foreclosures. And one of the things about foreclosures is they're a procedural part of the law. Any lawyer that does foreclosure work for a bank probably does a lot of foreclosure work. Foreclosures are really quite highly regulated by the courts. And so over time, processes have developed so that lawyers know how long they have to give a borrower, what kind of wording they're going to use, how much time before they get on to the next step, which would be to actually start the lawsuit. Because up till now, between both the lender when they're trying to collect and the lawyer with his demand letter, this has all been just talk. Maybe a couple of letters, but nothing really formally legal. So we're in Alberta here, and when I speak about this, folks, I'm talking about how I know it to be in Alberta. It will be a similar process in all of the provinces, similar but not the same. So the law firm acting for the bank, the lawyer will, if his demand letter gets no results, will start the legal process by issuing a legal document, by preparing and issuing a legal document called a statement of claim. Statement of claim has TD Bank's name as the plaintiff, Wayne's name as the borrower not paying, plaintiff and defendant. Wayne is the defendant. And the statement of claim just basically tells the story. It says, we hereby demand that you pay this amount of money. Our client, TD Bank, says that you owe this amount, plus this amount for interest, plus this amount for, and then they list a bunch of other things. And then there's a whole bunch of other paragraphs about why Wayne has to pay up by a certain time or he'll face a judgment. There's always a certain amount of time for Wayne to reply. They don't send out the statement of claim, and if Wayne doesn't pay by the next day, then they can take the next step. In Alberta, you would have 20 days after service. So the statement of claim gets drafted on a Monday. It gets filed at the courthouse on a Wednesday, which has to be filed to turn it into an official lawsuit. The lawyer gets it back on Thursday. He puts it on a big stack on Friday. On Monday, he remembers to talk to his secretary about it and says, okay, here it is, the filed statement of claim, serve Wayne. So the process servers, the employees of the lawyer have to find Wayne and give him that statement of claim, which is called service, serving the statement of claim. Once it's actually been served, then Wayne's time in which he has to respond starts to run, not until he gets served. Service can take different forms, and that's a whole other story. But in Alberta, Wayne will have 20 days to give an answer to the statement of claim, and if he doesn't, the law firm can go off to court and get a judgment against Wayne after saying to the judge, well, judge, we issued the statement of claim, here it is, we filed it at the courthouse, here's proof of that. Our process server tried to reach Wayne, and he did in fact reach him. On this day, here's what's called the affidavit of service, where the process server says, yeah, on that day I went to Wayne's house, banged on the door, he answered, I gave him the statement of claim. Then they start counting Wayne's 20 days from that date of service. So that gets the whole process going. In many cases, defendants do not file a defense because there is really
no defense.
There is really no defense to you owe the money, and here's all the details of why you owe the money. Sometimes what Wayne would do in a case like this, where he's still interested in participating in the court process, but realizes he doesn't have a defense, he files something called a demand of notice. Demand of notice. The demand of notice is a document, gets prepared. It also gets filed at the courthouse. Wayne would then serve that on the lawyer. And what the demand of notice does, it makes the bank's lawyer give Wayne notice of all of the steps that the bank is now taking in the court action. So in Wayne's case, he's going, okay, I don't have a defense, but I haven't, and I know I haven't paid for now, say 6 months, 4 to 6 months, but Wayne will have his own reason for saying, but I can pay up. I can pay up. I just don't want them to take the property away from me without me having a chance to have my say to the judge. So the demand of notice causes the bank's lawyer to make sure that Wayne gets a notice of any upcoming actions. So Wayne's 20 days passes. He doesn't file the statement of defense, but he does file the demand of notice. The bank's next step is to go off to court and ask for an order, a foreclosure order. This is a $5 legal word called an order nisi, an NISI, which is the lawyer showing up in court and saying to the judge, okay, here's Wayne's details. Here's his story. This is how much he owes. These are the legal fees. This is all the interest. This is what the property manager says is the state of the property and what it's been costing. This is what our appraiser says. So the bank will hire an appraiser to establish the value of the property, a very important factor when the court is considering what they're going to do with this property. So Wayne would get copies of all of those kinds of things, and when the lawyer goes into court with this for his application for this order nisi, he's looking to get a final order from the judge. He's looking to know when it is that the bank can take the property back from Wayne or list it for sale. When the bank can actually take a firm step that helps them move along. And the relevant factors in how long that will take are whether or not Wayne has any equity in the property. If Wayne has no equity in the property because he got a 5% down mortgage, and in a collapsing market or a negative market, the values have dropped so that the property is worth the mortgage amount or less than the mortgage amount, the court will not be inclined to give Wayne very much time to catch up or any time to catch up, because right now Wayne isn't paying and the value of the mortgage is the value of the property. And so every month that Wayne doesn't pay, the bank's protection in the loan decreases. It decreases. The loan goes up, the value of the loan goes up, and the value of the property stays the same, or maybe it's decreasing. And in a really quite negative market, the two things are going the wrong way, aren't they? The amount Wayne owes is going up and the value of the property is going down. So any protection the bank has, the gap is getting the gap's getting wider and wider.
Is there more benefit for a lender to sell it at like a fire sale and just be done with it quick, or are they trying to get the best possible price for it?
I'm going to bring Neil in on that one. That's always a consideration. I mean, the bank's main concern is that they want to get paid everything that they are owed and all of their extra costs, all the legal fees, all the property manager fees, all the insurance fees, anything that's being expended on the property, they certainly want to get. So when they're looking at the numbers, that's their main focus. Now they can't fire sale it. And Neil, why is that? Why can't they just say, when the lawyer shows up for the order nisi, let's just sell it to the first schmo that comes along?
The quick answer that I have to that, of course, which is never a quick answer, is that in Canada, that equity that a homeowner may have. Now, in the case that you were outlining, Barry, where the value of the property maybe is just at or really close to the debt amount, they will shorten what's called that redemption period, which is the amount of time they will ask for a shortening of the redemption period. Typically, the master will grant it and say, yes, it's very short, as you said, to protect the bank's position. And the chances that Mr. Indigent is going to come current and redeem the mortgage are fairly low. By the way, if a word's already been said, I don't know the $5. If you go to the US, though, their system does not protect the consumer. And I always illustrate to people that way. So if you had a property worth $300,000 and you owed $200,000 on it, the banks absolutely were fire selling those properties to get their money out, and which was tubing values on the street in neighborhood by neighborhood, which caused that meltdown 12-ish years ago. Mm-hmm. In Canada, the courts will protect the homeowner's equity. They are, I don't know, Barry, you can explain the legal side of it, but I'll say they're bound to, they have a duty to protect the homeowner, even though they're being sued.
From my there needs to be an appraisal done, and then the offer system is it has to be done in court, and all the offers are hidden. Is this my general knowledge? Is this correct, Barry? So that way that it's not taken advantage of. There is definitely an appraisal that gets done on the property, during that process.
Yes, there is an appraisal that gets done, and so Neil was talking about the redemption period. Alberta legislation says that borrowers should have an opportunity to redeem. And the amount of time the court gives them to redeem, redeem means to pay up everything you owe and bring the mortgage back into good standing. The amount of time they get to redeem is called the redemption period. If there's any decent amount of equity in the property, buyers will get a 6-month redemption period.
Typically 6 months.
6 months, could be up to 6 months. So if you look back at the timing, if it took Wayne's not paying 3 to 4 months to get to the lawyer, and Wayne actually has some equity, he can show up because he's filed his demand of notice and say, Judge, really, I got a shot at fixing this thing. Plus, I do have some equity in the property, and the judge will give him 6 months to bring it current. Mm-hmm. And so now, before anything happens to Wayne and his property, it's 9 to 10 months after he couldn't make a payment. So that's all part of what courts do in Alberta to protect homeowners. They really don't want to take properties away, and we'll get into that a bit further on about how far courts take that position of not wanting to take property away. So where are we? So we're in court with the judge saying, here's the appraisal, here's the equity, here's the this, and here's what I want. If Wayne has no equity in the property and the values are going the wrong way, the judge is going to want like a 1-day redemption period, because their position is worsening all the time. If he has a fair bit of equity, he could get up to 6 months to bring the property into good standing. And at this point, I think, if we're talking about the court process, and we'll talk about the court process, and we'll talk a little bit about before the court process, because I think that's fertile ground for lots of our members to try and do something with foreclosures, is not actually in the court process, but it's really at this order nisi, this first order application by the bank's lawyer, where things start to get interesting. Mm-hmm. For Wayne, if he got a 6 month redemption period, well, nothing's going to happen in that 6 months. Wayne gets 6 months to try and figure things out, to try and figure out how he's going to pay. And so nothing's going to happen at that point. The lawyer for the bank is not going to be taking any more steps. He's not going to be forcing Wayne to do anything. But if it's let's say it's a 1-day redemption period, that really means that the lawyer is going to be asking the bank for probably one of two orders. I think in one case, the lawyer will be saying to the court, the lawyer will be saying to the court, okay, he doesn't have any equity, and there's really no prospects for selling this property, so we want to foreclose this property like now, as quick as we can. We want to put the property in our name, change the title from Wayne's name to our name, which is really that's really what foreclosure means, is actually taking over the property and putting it in your name. Yeah. So they might ask for that, or if there's some equity, or if they think it might sell, if the market is improving, the court may require the lender to do what's called a judicial listing. So Neil, in your experience, have you been through those couple of processes where the court is making a decision about what next step to take when the bank is in saying, okay, time to get an order here?
Yes, we've been involved in both scenarios that you've outlined, Barry. In one case, it was the one of two times that we actually did a sandwich lease, which is why I don't really like doing sandwich leases anymore, in that we were paying sandwich leases, folks, is where, let's say Wayne owns the property. I'm pointing the wrong way to the screen. Wayne owns the property. He's going to rent it to me, and I'm going to turn around and rent it back out to, that way, Barry as the tenant. So Wayne's my landlord, but Barry becomes my tenant, and I'm trying to sell it to Barry, typically on a rent to own in between. Sometimes sandwich leases are just because I can rent it for $1,000, turn around, sublease it for $1,500. There's no option to purchase in this case, and I'm just picking up $500 for being in the middle. That's a sandwich without anything beyond the lease. Short version again, we had a sandwich lease with a lady who, because she couldn't afford the place, and we learned that maybe we need to ask a little more, we put our rent-to-own tenant in place into that property, enough that we were cash flowing on the rent that we were receiving from her versus what the rent I was paying to the owner. The owner then went and filed for bankruptcy and claimed the property obviously as an asset and the debt from the bank against it. It was a 5% down type deal. So the lawyer was there that morning in foreclosure court to do exactly what Barry had said, to say no redemption period, there's nothing here for the owner. We want it moved directly from her to the bank's name. We don't want it to go judicial sale because that just adds more time and cost to the process and means less proceeds again for the lender. And we were lucky in that we had figured out who, from reading because we were on title, if you file a caveat on title, you will get notice of action. Mm-hmm. So we received a notice of the defendant, the homeowner, being sued by the bank. Went to court that day. Google search ahead of time told me who I was looking for in terms of the name of the lawyer, who, as Barry said, he's done a lot of foreclosures in this case for Scotiabank. They tend to go back and back and back to the same person. I introduced myself to him while we're waiting for our case to be called and explained my situation to him, that I said I had actually made an offer to the bankruptcy trustee, and I brought it with me to show him. And he says, "You're prepared to pay that for the property?" "Yes, I need to protect my rent-own tenant." "Come with me," he says. We went in the back room in the court, the private conference rooms that are there. We sat, and he says, "Okay, just so you have this." And I said, "Yep, you're ready to go, and you're going to do this?" "Yes." So he went before the judge and actually amended his forced sale request to say, instead of it going from the current owner who wasn't making the payments to the bank, they deleted right there on the spot the bank's name and put our name in and amended the order. And we saved our relationship basically with the rent-own tenant, because again, that was our name on the deal. And she ended up eventually cashing us out. We had to go and get the money. They gave us I can't remember, but I would suggest that they typically want to see 10-20% of the value paid within 24 to 48 hours, and then the balance of it within a certain period of time. And again, that happened, that's 5-6 years ago at least, if not longer. And from memory, it wasn't long, but I can't tell you how many days that it actually was. And so everything transferred through, and obviously they did the title transfer for us. So I think that might be the only transaction where I've purchased a house unrepresented by a lawyer.
In a foreclosure.
In a foreclosure.
So one really important thing that comes out of that, folks, on foreclosures generally. So again, we're talking about Alberta. Neil talked about filing this thing called the caveat against the title. That's the way in Alberta we put a notice on a title that we have an interest in a property. If you've written an offer, if you have an option, if you have a right of first refusal, all of those are circumstances where you can put a notice against the title to protect your interest. You have an interest in the property, you're not on the title yet. So in Alberta, we use this thing called the caveat. All other provinces have their own way of putting some sort of notice against the title to protect a buyer or a person who has an interest in a property. But apart from that little bit of background, the one really key thing I think that comes out of here as we talk about foreclosure basics is that money talks. The ability to take action talks. Mm-hmm. If you're a person who could get in there and as Neil did, say to the foreclosure lawyer, "Listen, I have an offer and I'm ready to buy." If you are indeed that person, you can do deals. You can make things happen. Foreclosures are frustrating for foreclosure lawyers. The bank's lawyers are often very terse. You ask for information, you write, and you want to know this, and you're trying to do some diligence on a property to make a buying decision. They're just trying to foreclose the damn thing, and they get paid usually a fixed amount. They don't get to bill however much time they expend. As I said, foreclosures are pretty regulated, and so foreclosure lawyers can only bill within a certain range without getting further court approval for a bigger bill. So they're edgy because talking to you and other tire kickers burns up their clerk's time, their secretary's time, their time, and often goes for naught, and they can't collect. So they're often a little edgy about it. But if you're a person who can cut a deal, who has money, who can convince them that you will do what you say you're going to do, you can get action and cut deals. And Neil, I think you found that with other deals, haven't you?
Yeah, and let's be very clear. we don't have the cash. We're very fortunate to have some hard money lenders who are on tap, that relationships that have been built over the years, where you have a confidence level going in to buy a place that if your backup plan is cash, or maybe it's your first plan going in is to buy it cash, that you can make 3 phone calls and raise, you know, the money and the amount of time you need to get it done. So that again is, I'm sure, a good topic about hard money lending has come up before. And so, yeah, just to be clear, we don't have cash, but yes, the ability to close quickly, right? For those of us who we buy houses, we all want to close quickly when the situation warrants. And cash money talks, easiest way to put it.
All right. So that is kind of, I would say, the background of getting to the stage in a foreclosure where, you know, where the bank's lawyer is in court asking a judge to take some definitive kind of action. And I know we could probably go into more details here, but I want to now talk about, you know, what this means for anybody in our group if they're interested in foreclosures. And I think foreclosures have this they have this magic about them. Aura, yes. There's an aura around foreclosures that, and people go, man, if I could just get a couple of foreclosures, and usually they mean if I could just buy a couple of properties cheap, that would just supercharge my my investing career. So I don't want to start by being negative, but I think let's say we're being careful and realistic about what's available in foreclosures. So because there's so much interest in foreclosures, and because there's that aura, and because people continue to think there's gold in the streets in the foreclosure market, that's not the way it is. There's actually a fair bit of competition on the foreclosure side. Either of you guys have experience with that?
I've done enough research into it, but I know we're not the States, that's for sure. And a lot of fast talking, you know, American YouTubers make it seem like, you know, you can get these amazing deals for 1/3 of the value, and you lipstick and rouge it, and then you sell it and you make some fast cash. But it's not like that in Canada. As you said, not to be negative, but just the rules that revolve around, you know, getting access to those properties.
So yeah, so there is an aura around foreclosures, and if you're going to be if you're going to be involved in the foreclosure market, one of the things you have to do, and of course you have to do it for every property, is you have to accomplish enough diligence on the property to make a buying decision. And remember, making a buying decision means I'm buying it or maybe I'm not buying it. But in any event, you have to accomplish enough diligence to make a decision. And so that is one of the things about foreclosure. So let's talk about the pre-foreclosure situation. Pre-foreclosure. We all of us market. We have various ways of looking for potential deals. Various ways we network, we have websites, we have referrals, we have funnels that bring us potential prospects. And if your marketing brings you a prospect and the prospect says, hi, Wayne, now you're the good guy, Wayne. Says, hi, Wayne, I saw your ad that you help people in trouble. Well, I'm in trouble. I'm being foreclosed on. And then the conversation starts. So, you know, Wayne, you might not have had too many of these conversations, but if I'm calling you up and saying, Wayne, you help people in trouble, I'm in trouble, I'm being foreclosed on and I need help. I mean, what might you say to me?
I've had actually quite a few of those conversations. You know, a lot of people and reaching out and through marketing. And, you know, first things first, you got to figure out how far along it is, right? What kind of notice has been given to you? You know, has it gone as far as a statement of claim? To see where you can actually help out, because you know, if we're pre-foreclosure, there is a line, there's a threshold that, you know, you really can't help. And then after that, you want to figure out, you know, what are the numbers? You want to figure out, how much do you owe and what's the value of the property, to see if this is actually a decent enough deal for me to actually pursue. Because I'm assuming that they're going to want what they owe at the very least. And you as a buyer, you want to make sure, is that a good enough investment for you? And then lastly, you can add in, maybe some of the creative seller financing strategies like agreement for sale. If it's not too far gone, you may be able to help them immediately and take over their payments. And that's a majority, primarily what I was going after was trying to find opportunities for seller financing where I could take over their payments, catch them all up. And then, so long as too many, if they were behind on multiple payments, you know what I mean, it may have damaged their credit. It's gonna damage their opportunity to get a decent interest rate in the future, which I don't really want to touch, because if I want an agreement for sale on this, I'm basing it off of the interest rate, a low interest rate. I don't want them to increase it later down the road. So that's the preliminary stuff. That's the due diligence you want to do initially, to determine if there's anything there.
That makes sense. So that is different for every property. I mean, the numbers really, it runs from the numbers. How much do you owe? How many payments are you behind? Can you catch up? What do you want to do with the property? You got to get those numbers, and often people are a little vague on what the numbers are.
Yeah.
Some people know to the penny how many payments they've missed. They know whether they're paying up their insurance. They know it, and they can give you a pretty good understanding of it. Some people are really vague about it. How about you, Neil? Do you have a pre-foreclosure scenario or so you can tell us about?
Yeah, there's probably a few out there, and again, some of this stuff that we're going to talk about, I'm always trying to say, yes, we're all in Alberta, the three of us, but if you talk about across the country right now, we are coming off an unprecedented year where people had the benefit of maybe up to 6 months of deferral on mortgage payments, and they had CERB coming in. The 6-month deferral periods are long in the rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. And CERB has been replaced, and maybe for some people not replaced, and they don't have that coming in. So there's an opportunity. It's not just an Alberta thing. Even in the good times, in the last mini boom we had here, there were still people who would call us who were in trouble. So I want to take a minute on that. But in our particular instance, why do we like a pre-foreclosure? It's for a couple of reasons. One is that there's motivation. When someone is behind, they're not just thinking about selling their property. They know that there's something looming. And the people who take the time to contact you through the various marketing methods that you're talking about, to say, I'm okay. We've had more than one person who said, that flyer you dropped in our door? And I said, yeah, it was like a year ago. They said, we kept that. We stuck it on a magnet on our fridge because we knew we might be in trouble, right? And Wayne, I think, will tell similar versions about meeting people a year before he buys their house. So the pre-foreclosure, A, gives them a little motivation. B means we can take it and buy the property before things like realtor commissions get added in, before legal fees get added in, before a bunch of NSF payments, et cetera, stuff that really balloons the cost to buy the property that wouldn't have existed if you found the house in between. So really, a pre-foreclosure to us is no different than a private seller who's in good standing, but quite frankly, the motivation tips a whole lot harder for the folks who are behind in payments. Or in the case of the one we did in October, he knew exactly when his deferral period was ending on the property. I don't know how much investigation he had done to figure out other alternatives. He also knew that his tenants had bailed on that property in July. And so when he called us, he went, I'm stuck, right? And that's the word we hear. And because he had some damage from them, he had abandoned goods in the property. He was living out of the city, so he was relying on his brother to help him to the extent that he could. They ran the house all summer without any natural gas in the place. So now the weather's turning cold and his payments due. So we literally took it over on the day that the day before his payments were to resume in the mortgage. So he actually never went behind. But I would characterize him as pre-foreclosure. Yeah. In that he knew that if he hadn't had the deferral period, he would have been in, at that point where he was getting all the calls from the 1-800 people who are always so polite on the phone, So pre-foreclosure, the advantage obviously is if you can be there and take some of the techniques that we talk about in your courses about really a $300,000 house on MLS, and doesn't matter unless you're in a multiple offer scenario, but in most markets, it doesn't sell for 300. So there's a reduction in there. There's realtor commissions. There's payout penalties and all that stuff. And if we can get in and make a proposal that makes sense, then it becomes win-win, like we talk about, where a buyer is getting, they get to move on with their life, is a lot of times what we say to people. And they actually, you can see the weight lift off their shoulders, and their expressions and the look on their face changes, because they've been carrying this weight around for so long that they don't know what to do, and they're stuck. So like, even if you're in the hottest market in Ontario right now, be it somewhere in the GTA or down to Ottawa, there are going to be people who, by virtue of their situation, in spite of a hot market, are still experiencing things that put people into foreclosure: job loss, divorce. Those are the two major ones that come to my mind right now. Lawsuits, failed business.
Bought it recently.
Yeah. Well, if you're in Ottawa, no big deal. You just picked up 10% by buying it 3 months ago.
I just it's
A rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, keep going.
Well, I was going to say, to add on to what you're saying about the opportunities that are available right now, now that CERB is done, and now that the deferrals are all done, what I've actually heard as well is that mortgage lenders are doing a lot of extra due diligence during renewal times now. For anyone who took any of those deferral periods, they're actually doing more due diligence and actually pulling credits and pulling title and seeing what's going on. And I've actually had it, happen to me personally on an agreement for sale deal that I have, where my seller apparently some things changed, her credit went down, and then when it came time for renewal, because she had an amazing interest rate before, came time for renewal, they offered her like 6.5%. And we're trying to figure out what the heck's going on. It was because during that time, I guess banks are just they're I don't want to say like trimming the fat, but they're offloading some of the less desirable mortgages to kind of lower and mitigate their risk, because of all the risk they've taken on by all those deferrals and stuff. So it's not only just, the end of deferrals, but also when people come for renewals and their credit has been damaged and they've taken on extra debt and stuff like that. Some people may be shocked to get a renewal rate of 6.5%, and then their payments continue to go up. It's just there's more and more problems to be solved, is what I'm saying. And I guess in real estate investing, those are called opportunities.
Yeah, that is true, and it's a little I think thing we have to watch if you're looking to speak to a homeowner, help him bring his debt current, and then the way that you're going to participate is to purchase from him by way of agreement for sale. You have to be a little careful about that, because remember, in an agreement for sale, it's seller financing, but it depends almost always on an underlying mortgage staying in good standing, and we want, as agreement for sale buyers, we want to have the ability usually to extend the term of the agreement for sale, and that depends on the owner being offered renewals by his lender. And if he has been a bad boy, then you might have your first, say there's 2 years left on a mortgage, which means it's probably 2 years on your AFS. But 2 years out, the bank might not be renewing or accept at a high rate. So that's a little subtle thing that you have to take into account in these weird times if you're relying on seller financing like an AFS.
Have a plan B to take out the AFS to have it mature and you pay it out and transfer the title, even if you don't have it sold. So whether that's your own source of financing, hopefully not a hard money lender because that's expensive, or a joint venture set up in place that we can take out, Bob AFS seller and replace their financing. Again, we'll take on a pre-foreclosure house. We've done it in the past with MCAP. The one that we talked about last week was an MCAP deal. He has about a year to go before maturity. We think that we have a plan to not hang on to the house that long, but obviously exit also is multiple. So plan B says I better be aware that by next February that I can take out that financing. But we had also done one with MCAP, and you're right, Wayne, that whole past performance is not a predictor of future. Says that MCAP, we had one that literally was within, I have to go back and dig it up. I bet you it was within 3 to 6 months of maturity when we brought that current, paid the lawyer fees, paid everything out, and then bought it out through AFS with the seller, and we got the renewal. But the renewal was a bonus going into that deal because we went, we're going to have to replace this mortgage, and he got a renewal. It's like,
nice.
So,
like you were ready.
We were prepared to have to factor it into our deal that says, is it still worth buying this place? Do we have the capacity to take it on either in our portfolio directly or via joint venture? And it worked out that he got the extension. We took him out soon after that anyways. That's a whole other short story about shortfall. We had to put some money into that we didn't plan on, but we still took him out at that point. So.
All right. So Wayne, did you have another comment or?
Oh, I was just going to say that I know we got about 10 minutes left, but I know that like the number one thing that people are going to want to know after watching a segment like this is like, how do you find
Where do I find them? Yeah.
How do you do it?
Okay, where do we do it? I don't know. You guys are the experts. I'm just a lawyer, for God's sake.
Marketing, right?
Everywhere.
Way back when someone said to us when we were doing weekly mentor calls, what steps have you taken on the 12 methods of marketing to buy houses this week? And we would have to say, well, we've gone and we've updated our Kijiji ads. And they didn't know what Kijiji ads were because they were American. We've gone and put bandit signs out. We've flyered. In this day and age, it would be we have a good Google AdWord campaign going. We have our website going. We have all of these places, folks, where you source. We have good word of mouth advertising going, right? You're chatting up your realtor contacts, your lawyer contacts, your bank contacts that says, you know, it's rare, but occasionally we'll get someone who said, I was at the bank and they said they can't recommend because it's a conflict of interest, but they said you might want to look at this website. And we get calls that way too. Because again, as you build a reputation within your community of being a problem solver, it helps generate that word of mouth. Our number one goal when we're our website is all about having a testimonial video, because you cannot beat that. Again, from what I understand about social media and marketing and ranking, video helps your page rank. Mm-hmm. So if I get a testimonial from John on Airdrie House Buyers, we're happy, right? Because it not only pushes my page up in organic rankings, but it helps make that phone ring more, well, I guess it does help, that sort of thing. So how do you find them? That's one way to find them. The other way you can find them, quite frankly, is every person who has a realtor can have them set up a search that says, give me all the listings. And there is, and I can't remember it, someone bail me out, but somewhere in there it says ownership, and it might actually say court or in foreclosure or bank. If that's actually a property that's through foreclosure.
So keywords specifically?
Yeah, there's an ownership status. Again, I'm talking about Alberta. There's ownership status that says private, I think. So we key on the ones that aren't private for that. You can look for keywords in there. You can ask for anything that has the word schedule included, because typically a foreclosure listing is going to have in the realtor notes, all offers must have the attached Schedule A accompanying them. So a couple of those keywords to look for. Sometimes you just key the word foreclosure into a search and have your realtor email us. The property we talked about last week came to us very last minute because it was in a search and my searches are messed up right now. And so it came via another search and went, what's that house? He goes, oh, that one's in foreclosure. And I pulled the title, right? So it gets you in front of a seller. And again, tying that back in, the homeowner will always have the right to redeem that mortgage until they no longer can, because the court has awarded the sale. And we pulled it out on the day that they went to award the sale to an offer on MLS.
Right.
So marketing, where do you find them? Just keep marketing, word of mouth. Got to run your websites. Got to just keep moving, casting lines in the water, right? Different lines.
If you were desperate in a situation, where would you look? What's the first thing you would do? Like if you were behind your payments, pre-foreclosure example, and what would you do? I would type in buy my house Airdrie, and I'm fairly certain you're going to be in the top 3, right? Because you put that energy and you put that effort into making sure you're there. When people are driving home from work and they're at a stoplight, your sign could be right there. It's all about being the top of mind when someone is in that moment of desperation. or perhaps that you delivered a card to their door and they kept it on their fridge. And then when they were in a desperate situation, your card was there. So that's marketing. You know, when someone wants to buy tuna, you know, you want to be right in front of their face. You want to have a display there, right, to pick that tuna. So it's just basic marketing. So you got to know who your client is and what problem you're solving, and then just put it everywhere they might be looking.
What are they going to type into Google to help solve their problem so that you pop up as a solution? Same
thing with Kijiji. Any keyword, you know, anywhere you type in a keyword, where they would be looking. It's super important. Your title in Kijiji is super important. Facebook, if you're allowed to, super important.
So marketing, folks, I mean, the summary of this is we all have to market for our creative deals, no matter which strategy we're using. And so there's a whole whack of marketing techniques you can use. So the way you find them is to market and use the kind of marketing techniques that work for you. If it isn't working, try something else. Keep going. Got to have multiple ways of multiple lines to put in the water to see if you can catch fish. So on the pre-foreclosure side of things, it's really valuable to talk to people before it goes off to the lawyer, to have some room in a deal where you don't have to pay payout penalties, where you don't have to pay lawyer fees, where you don't have to pay real estate commission. There's a lot of financial room in there to do something on a deal before it gets off to the lawyer. So that's why we like the pre-foreclosure side of things. But
here's an idea that just occurred to me. You know, in the old days, they said, well, you could wrap your vehicle or put a bumper sticker on it. And I've seen people who did that, right? Andrea, with the whole truck wrapped, We Buy Houses in her website in Red Deer, that now generates organic. I don't even know, is she running it or is she just getting referral business anymore? I don't think she even runs the site anymore.
She said she doesn't even run that website because Andrea has been at it so long. She's got so many people sending her deals. She's so plugged in. She's so networked that she gets all her deals like that. And that's where you want to get to.
Return on the time invested. But here's a thought that just occurred to me the other day. I had actually passed it out to, was working on getting established as a wholesaler. And I said, in the gig economy, because I'm old and I don't really know what the gig economy is, what if you went and put an ad out on Facebook that says, I'm interested in speaking to, if you're an Uber, DoorDash, Skip driver, and you paid them, I need to see a minimum of this many kilometers driven in a month, and I will pay you so many cents per kilometer or a fixed fee. How many of those people wouldn't, and I don't know the number, would say for $50 or $100 worth of you know, deferral of their expenses, quite frankly, that they would put a mesh thing on the back of the back window of their vehicle that allows them to see through it, you know, that perforated wrap. We Buy Houses, call Wayne, right? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And it's just an idea that is moving with the times that, you know, I thought about putting it onto taxis years ago. The taxi company, he wanted too much money because they know that they can sell their space, right? Yeah. We've seen taxis for years with billboards on them. And the city buses were too expensive for what we wanted to spend in our budget. But in this gig economy, food for thought.
Creativity.
Food for thought.
Barry, do you mind if I ask you one quick question that I would ask if I were watching this?
Sure.
Before we finish. So let's say you're scrolling on MLS. That's what I was actually doing today. I was looking on MLS and I saw a foreclosure property. And I'm interested. So I get my realtor to go there and make an offer. What is the process for the offering? How does that work, and how does it get accepted? Is it accepted by the bank? Is it accepted by the courts? Do you mind explaining that process?
Well, you know what? I'm going to give that to Neil because he's just gone through that.
So if the offer's too low, I think the lawyers have the right to just flat out reject it, right? They can say to the realtor, is this realistic? Do we have a chance of getting a better one? They can just punt the offer. That said, that same offer might fly down the road if 30, 60, 90 days have elapsed in the listing.
Right.
The second part that goes with that is, so once they believe they have an offer that's reasonable for the court to look at, and jump in anytime, Barry, if you think that maybe all offers get presented, but I've seen them get flat rejected. Just no, too low to consider. When we've tried lowballing on foreclosures, and we get that response back, so we know it's never even gone to court. But in the case where it's now considered reasonable, so the house last week was listed at 298. They rejected 235. The offer they were presenting to the court was 295, and it was a clean, condition-free deal, which it's reasonable for the judge to say, yeah, you've done your time in there. They would then take that offer and book another time in court, because I don't know the legal term for booking time in court, and then present the offer to the court for the judge basically to approve the sale, the judicial sale, and have a forced sale. Is that the term for it, Barry? Where the title transfers from the homeowner directly to the offer, the purchaser.
I don't think that's a forced sale. I mean, that's a court approved sale.
Oh, court approved. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. We'll take that out of the transcript. What transcript? So now here's an interesting one that goes with that really quickly. If 3 offers show up in court,
Mm-hmm.
and you happen to go to court that day, or your realtor does, and they have authorization from you to act, but typically you go, ask us how we know, you can actually listen to the offers as they're presented, because a lot of times you're not told before you go to court what the offers are.
Right.
And when they give everyone an opportunity to speak, you can put up your hand and say, Master, I am prepared, after doing more research, to actually put another bid in on this house. I would like to pay more. And I actually had the master say to me, we're not here to run an auction. And I said, I don't see anyone else bidding here, with all due respect. And I got away with it. So in that particular case, what they did was, he said, okay, fine. And they don't want their courtrooms to become bidding arenas.
Right.
So again, Alberta, can't tell you if this happens everywhere, but if you get to court, if your offer, Wayne, that you wrote today is accepted to be presented in court,
Yeah.
and you go there and you find out there's actually, and usually your realtor can find this out if it's multiple offer going to court, and you show up there, there's a possibility, because again, I don't know if they're still doing it that way, but there's a possibility that the judge will say, fine, we're not running a circus here, but I will allow for a sealed tender bid at this point. It has to be accompanied by your bank draft and your deposit if you want to participate in round 2 and rebid the house. And we won a house that way by just upping our offer. It was crazy. I think we put another $2,500 on the table on a $300,000 in some low threes property.
Really?
And they, I believe, would have notified everyone else of their intent to do that, all the other realtors present. And we went back in a week later and we got it, right? So.
So I think as to finish tonight, I just want to say, we talked about the pre-foreclosure side, no courts, no lawyers. Now we're finishing with the in-court multiple offer side of things. Courts are pretty reasonable about listening. You always can have a chance. If you have an interest in a property, if you've got something to say, you can have your say. They may tell you to get lost. They may tell you what you're saying isn't relevant. You don't know what you're talking about, but you can have your say. And so judges and lawyers, they're just folks. If you know what you're talking about and know what you want, the worst they can tell you, if you get up in court and say, I want to make another bid, or I need some extra time, or the owner will come to court tomorrow because he's got his inheritance. You can say what you want, and nobody's going to bite your head off. I mean, the worst they can say is, sorry, we're not listening to you. And nobody will be mean to you. The court's very polite. It's very, very polite. They're polite as they stick the stiletto in up into your, no, I mean, they're very polite as they work their way through the process. So I think that's important for everybody to know about. If you're in the court side of things, you can talk, you can have your say, you can bring reasonable or unreasonable propositions forward, and you will be at least listened to. And often there's a chance to do something. And on that note, folks, how did we burn up an hour doing that so fast? But we did.
It's a good topic.
So, yeah, it's a good topic, and there's lots more to be said. So, folks who are listening, if there's more interest in this, if you want us to delve deeper into different aspects of this in a future main event, well, then by all means, tell Donna, and we will get into it. But on that note, I have to sign off because we're getting ready for a 6 o'clock start on another event. So, ciao, everyone.
$5 word. Congrats.